Am I the a-hole for accidentally calling out a new colleague on lying about her language skills? Am I the a-hole for banning my mother-in-law from the house? Am I the a-hole for medically tattooing my child under the recommendation of a doctor? Am I the a-hole for accidentally calling out a new colleague on lying about her language skills? Last week, a new colleague, Kathy, 33 female, started at my 25 female workplace. She instantly stood out in the team because she seems like someone who is very loud and assertive. Two of my colleagues, me and Kathy, were having coffee in the break room. We were the only ones in there and we were sitting far apart. When the subject of travel was brought up, my colleague said she wasn't booking trips anymore because it's probably get canceled because of COVID anyway. Kathy immediately cut in about how sad she is because she travels so often and she goes on these far exotic trips to Europe as her hobby. When I think exotic, I think the Bahamas or something instead of Europe, but cool. Kathy then jokes about how all this no travel business is making her fear that she'll lose some of her foreign language skills. I asked what languages she spoke. She claimed to be fluent in three European languages, among which were French and Dutch. Kathy said she was at a native speaker level and went on about how people in Europe were always surprised when they found out she wasn't from there. I was excited because I never get to speak Dutch over here. I was raised in Belgium, which has three national languages, French and Dutch, which are my mother tongues and the most commonly spoken there, and German. It's quite common to be pretty fluent in at least two out of the three languages in Belgium, because you're required to learn them at school, along with English, from a young age. I told Kathy, "Oh fun, we have something in common then," in Dutch. She immediately pulled the sour face and asked me if that was supposed to be Dutch. I said yes. She laughed awkwardly and said she couldn't understand because I have a terrible accent and must not be that good at speaking at it. Now see, I don't have an accent. I speak Dutch more fluently than I speak English. I told Kathy I grew up speaking Dutch and speak it to my family all the time. She got miffed and asked what languages I speak and where I'm from. I told her I'm from Belgium, so I also speak French, and I added, which you just said you speak as well. Cool, we can speak French instead. I acknowledged that I was a bit of a dick here, because by that point I knew she probably lied about speaking French as well. She then shoved her chair back and angrily got up, said, whatever, and stomped off. It was awkward. My other colleagues just kind of shrugged and said she shouldn't have lied. However, she later approached me and told me I embarrassed her by acting superior about my European heritage. I told her there was no way for me to know she'd lied about speaking those languages. She rolled her eyes and told me I was immature. A colleague then told me that Kathy had called me a little B-word who enjoys bullying new colleagues behind my back later. I don't think I was a bully at all, but I don't want this to turn into a huge thing. Do I just apologize to keep the peace? Am I the a-hole?
NTA, but please make HR aware of it. Believe me, 3 years ago I started a new job and I did include my language skills on my resume. One of them being French too. I have relatives who speak the language, and I've been learning it since I was about 9. My manager told me that one of my coworkers also speak French. I was excited. The very first day I saw her, I started to speak French and she just looked offended and kindled like a deer in front of headlights. She asked me what was I doing in Finnish and I simply translated and added, "I thought you speak French, I'm sorry." She stormed off and for the rest of the shift was very cold to me. Me and my manager just gave each other a weird look and continued like nothing happened also. Next day my boss asks me if I have a minute. Apparently the lying BTCH told our boss I was the one lying and I cursed her, like a hex, in French and was being mean, calling her names and such. Our manager, who heard the original convo, was called to talk with me and my boss and I repeated what I said so she could confirm that it sounded exactly the same. Off to Google Translate and I got my boss to believe that I wasn't lying. I still got a permanent mark on my record since the liar made it with the boss before I got talked to and it couldn't be erased. So please, make HR aware. I don't think she necessarily lied about speaking Dutch. Might be just exaggerating, misjudging how good she is. I have a friend who is half Dutch, grew up in England. Spoke Dutch with his dad and some family members when they visited from Holland and is competent at it, reads books in Dutch, etc. But when we watched a TV show set in Belgium he struggled to understand a lot of it. I have the same issue with my second language. I understand it and speak it pretty well in the northern dialect I've been exposed to, but I'm lost when hearing people from the south unless they speak very slowly, which of course they don't lol. I know people who have learnt English who sound fluent to me, but they are lost when speaking to someone from Newcastle or the Welsh Valleys or anywhere with an accent they are not used to. Just completely throws them for a loop. I wouldn't say they are not good at English though. NTA in any case. As a native Dutch speaker, I'd like to put my 2 cents in, or however that saying goes, haha. Firstly, I don't think you did something wrong. However, when someone says to be fluent in Dutch, which is in the top 3 of difficult languages to learn, even above Chinese, I'd still take it with a grain of salt. It's just unlikely to be fluent in Dutch because it's a difficult language. For me, my first reaction would be to think, ah yeah. So you know some phrases then. Especially if she told you she learned it by traveling to Europe. It just sounds unreal to me. Unless she is super intelligent and or has been studying the languages for a good amount of years. I guess you could have gathered from her mentioning she speaks 3 languages fluently and also being loud and extroverted. I mean those 2 words you mentioned in your post. It is also a hint that she might just say stuff to show off how impressive she is or thinks to be. I myself have never had to go to HR to talk about a college's behavior. But I do feel like this would be at least worth considering because if she lied about this, what else did she lie about on her resume? What if she claims to have experience in a certain software which she doesn't and it will have effect in your department because she can't do why she claims she can? Personally, what I would do is go to her and say you were just super excited to be able to speak your native language but didn't mean to put her on the spot and try to make amends. But you are not an asshole at all. She lied, which just is not clever. Did she expect to never meet someone who speaks those languages? NTA, but as a native Dutch speaker from the Netherlands and thus not from Belgium, I have to say, depending on how thick the Flemish accent is, I have a lot of trouble understanding it. You do have an accent, but it's a Dutch accent. That does make it hard to understand. On top of that, vocabulary differs as well. For example, I would have never said Gemeenschapelijk in this context. We would use gemeen, short form of the same word, or maybe Gemeenschapelijks. I don't actually hear anyone say this, but it is correct here. Obviously, one sentence like that is hard to misunderstand, but please do realize that you do have an accent. It'll help you out in the future.
Am I the a-hole for banning my mother-in-law from the house? I, male 39, lost my late wife 6 years ago. I have a 16-year-old son, Daniel, and I recently got engaged to my fiancé of 2 years. Her mom and I aren't on good terms because of how she behaves. She's a controlling, self-centered Dolly Parton wannabe. I learned to ignore her crap, but she's been annoying Daniel and criticizing his personality regularly. He's a private kid and still hasn't gotten used to the new family dynamic, but he's in therapy and is doing fine. She keeps diagnosing him left and right, calling him antisocial, autistic, and other crap. Fact is, Daniel is a shy, well-mannered kid, but people confuse that with being antisocial. Mother-in-law tried several times to force Daniel to open up by embarrassing him with personal questions on family dinners and test his personality type. I realized the effect her behavior had on Daniel, so I gave him the choice to no longer be in the same house as mother-in-law, and he appreciated this a lot. Mother-in-law didn't take that Daniel kept his distance and no longer visits and kept bitching about how spoiled he will become for her daughter to deal with. I told her to stop bringing it up, but she cried, "I'm just doing this for Danny." Last week, she visited unexpectedly, wanting to say hi to Daniel. After Daniel greeted her, he went into the bathroom and she went into the living room with my fiancé. I was in my bedroom when Daniel came and said his journal was gone. We looked for it but didn't find it. I asked my fiancé, who was alone in the kitchen, but didn't see it. I paused for a second to ask where mother-in-law was. My fiancé said in the living room, but I saw her coming down the stairs. I asked where she was. She said the bathroom. I saw her purse in hand, so I bluntly asked if she took Daniel's journal. She looked offended and called for my fiancé when I insisted to see inside her purse. She wanted to leave, but I didn't let her. Fiancé told me to stop it, but I insisted and the journal was there. Mother-in-law tried to explain this was her only chance to get to know Daniel better because she cares about him. I blew up at her and berated her for stealing my son and told her she's banned from my house for the stunt she pulled. She argued with me then left. My fiancé apologized for her but said banning her from the house was over the top. It backlashed and the father-in-law argued and hoped his daughter realizes how effing above I am and call off the wedding for refusing to apologize to mother-in-law. Fiancé said her family won't come to the wedding till I reconcile with her mom and cancel the ban, but I won't let my son be disrespected in his own house and ask my fiancé to understand. I'm refusing to reconcile, but I am aware this could ruin my relationship with all my in-laws, not just mother-in-law, and my fiancé thinks I'm selfish to cause drama.
Wow, talk about crocodile tears, 100% not the asshole. Not sure how she can rationalize caring about your son, whilst continuously making him feel uncomfortable and abnormal for being himself and invading his privacy to get to know him, when she has made no real effort to get to know the real him, only to find parts of him that need to be fixed. If your fiancé can't understand how violating your MILS presence is in your house, I'm sorry but this is your future, as she obviously doesn't feel she can stand up to her, or even feels she needs to. If you haven't already, best to check that your fiancé doesn't have any similar feelings to your MIL, as she could be doing this upon the wishes of her daughter. Hope the situation sorts itself out. OP. AmItheA, you did the right thing and stood up for your son, who is your first obligation. I think you need to go one step further and have a conversation with your fiancé about setting and enforcing boundaries with her family. I would not marry her until you both are on the same page and you feel she is genuinely committed to your agreement re her family. She called you selfish for sticking up for your child and protecting them from an abusive adult. She should be upset with her family for treating you this way. There are the immediate issues with Daniel and you, but what if you have children with your fiancé? Mill's behavior may go to a totally different level. In the meantime, it would be good for Daniel to have space from fiancé and her family. Stealing his diary is a huge violation, and if the topic is being discussed in front of him, it would be very upsetting. If you haven't already, sit down and explain to him that what she did was not okay. He knows this, but it is very important he hears it from you. It's the fiancé for me. I do not understand how she could allow this to happen. Her mother literally stole something, then tried to lie about it right in front of all of you, and then got caught. Now your fiancé wants what exactly? To pretend like it never happened. This is a very troubling future for you and your son. I know that you love this woman, or at least I assume that you do, but I would tell her in no uncertain terms that the wedding is postponed and you guys need to go to couples therapy for a couple of months over this. If it works out, then you guys can resume the wedding planning, but for heaven's sake don't marry her until she realizes the damage that her mother is doing. I don't think she would realize it without a third party, which is why I mentioned therapy. Good luck, OP. Please remember that the decision that you make here will forever affect your son even more. Either you guys go to therapy, or he will have to go for a very long time. AmItheA, but your fiancé and her parents are. There is a huge red flag there, and you really need to rethink marrying into this family. Your fiancé does not have your back, nor does she have your son's back. You are a great dad for standing up for and protecting your son. Your son's welfare should continue to be your priority. There should be no doubt that your FMIL will continue to stomp all over your son's boundaries. The correct response for your fiancé should have been to be furious at her mother. Instead, she refused to acknowledge how bad it really was. Her mother is in serious danger of ruining any kind of positive relationship that you son and fiancé might have. Edit to add, consider allowing your son to have a lock on his bedroom door with just you and him having the keys. That way he can lock the door when he is not home or not in his room. And you can make sure that the door is locked if FMIL comes to visit.
Am I the a-hole for medically tattooing my child under the recommendation of a doctor? Hear me out. I, 31 female, and my husband tried for 5 years to get pregnant. Testing eventually revealed I have eggs of fucking steel and without medical help, I'll never get pregnant. So that's what we did. Gave our samples, one petri dish, and 9 months later, I have 2 beautiful fraternal twin boys, Jack and Adam. Faye. Thing is, Jack has a condition, without going into detail, requires a shot once a week. Once he is older, he can take pills. I went back to work and mother-in-law offered to watch the babies. She's wonderful, I trust her 100%. They were 9 months, now 16 months. During this time, she would give his injection as we had a schedule. 10 a.m. before snack and nap, worked very well until a month ago when she gave the shot to the wrong kid. Now they may be fraternal but they look identical. I'll be honest, my husband and I even mix them up sometimes. Everyone does. She immediately noticed her mistake, called 911 and they were transferred to hospital. By the time I got there, Adam had been given the reversal agent and they were both happily sipping on juice, loving the attention. We went home the same night, told to push fluids. He was never in danger. It's a very slow-acting medication that, at worst, would have given him diarrhea in a few days. Mother-in-law was beside herself. I tried to ease her worry but she refused to babysit, so to daycare they went. This daycare has a nurse because some of the kids have medications, so she knew what to do, but the worry of mixing up the kids was a valid concern, and they would not keep name tags on. Doctor recommended a medical tattoo. Explained they tattoo a freckle no bigger than the end of a pencil eraser on an area of skin that's easily seen while the child is under mild sedation, similar to dental offices. Because of the area, it usually fades in 2 to 3 years, but by then, they should have developed more personal features and may not need it redone. So after discussion with my husband, we did it. He has a 2 mm brown freckle on his earlobe. From entering the office to leaving it took 30 minutes. Never felt a thing. Mother-in-law lost her shit the second I mentioned a medical tattoo. I tried to explain but she just freaked out, so I put both kids on the floor and told her to pick up Jack and find the tattoo. She picked up Adam, so I handed her Jack and after 20 minutes still couldn't find it. Stripped him to his skivvies. I finally pointed it out and she went, "That's just a freckle." I just said, "My point exactly. Adam doesn't have a freckle there, so that's how daycare can tell them apart." She's still pissed and ranting. Once I explained to others and they fail to find it, they understand, but they still think I went too far in tattooing my child and altering their body. I believe I took the necessary precautions recommended by the doctor, and the tattoo will fade with sun exposure and as he grows. By the time he's 5, it probably won't even be visible, or it'll just look like a faded freckle. So am I the a-hole?
NTA. You went with an unobtrusive way to tell which child is which. One child needs daily medication, the other doesn't. The medication has side effects that could cause discomfort if given to the wrong child, maybe side effects that are more than just uncomfortable if nobody realizes it's given to the wrong child. Neither of them are old enough to tell anyone their names or anything. The tattoo didn't hurt and will probably never need to be reapplied in the future. Everything points to an easy way for family and medical staff to tell who is who for purposes of getting needed medicine. Why is Grandma upset? You'd think that she'd be happy, because now she will be able to tell the difference between both children. Now she can feel safe in babysitting them and giving medication. Just seems silly for her to have such a severe reaction. NTA. You had valid concerns about your child's health. You discussed it with their doctor. Doctor gave you a valid option. You discussed with your husband. You decided together to get the procedure done with your son's best interests at heart. The procedure happened to be a medical tattoo that provided an easy, fast, safe way to tell your twins apart, so one gets his meds and the other doesn't. Even if it would never fade, it looks like a freckle, and it sounds like unless you know what to look for, it isn't noticeable. If it had been another medical procedure, would your mill be upset? My guess is no. And although there is nothing wrong with tattoos, unfortunately a stigma can still exist. Maybe around other closed-minded people you can describe it as a medical procedure that gave one son a small semi-permanent identifying mark. Or just say that one has a small freckle on his ear. Because how he got it doesn't matter, keep being great parents. OMG NTA, but for crying out loud explain that it is a freckle on the earlobe and show it to them. Seems to me, you are causing all kinds of drama for no reason. When you say tattoo people have their own idea in their head of a tattoo, and this freckle is not what they are thinking. This is what the people are getting all freaked out about. Your MIL is probably still pissed because you freaked her out unnecessarily. As I said, if you would have just showed her, I am sure it would have been NP, and I am sure she would have been happy not to have to worry about the wrong child being given medication. I know I would. You are TAIMO for causing drama for no reason. Maybe you get a kick out of people searching for it or just stirring up crap, I don't know. Not trying to be mean, but geez.